like I said, number one is obviously going to be big boy Cooper Flagg. The big question with him is the shot creation. Does he have the ability to be more than a secondary option who's going to catch and shoot, play off of secondary actions, and have guys create most of the time for him than creating for himself? And I think that's something he could develop. And the whole thing is with him, he's one of, if not the hardest working guy people have said they've ever seen. So to me, for a guy who has the same age, or his twin brother is entering college now, aka he should have been in high school, he is an absolute freak. And to me, one of the more exciting players we've seen in a while. So let's move over to Newell, who I think is a guy that this is a switch big. He really reminds me of Nick Claxton. The big question with Newell is if the 3-point shot doesn't work out, he also needs to be 6'11". It'll make him more enticing than being 6'9". We've seen conflicting reports, but the whole thing with him is that he needs to be a shooter. If he's going to be a 4, he needs to be able to like at least be respectable, maybe like a Thomas Bryant level shooter, to be able to play the 4 and 5. If not, he has to get big enough to play the pure 5, which I think if you look at him like that, I'd rather go that route than trying to develop him as a 4. But a lot of people see him as a 4, but he's a switchable big who can day one impact the game defensively. He blocks shots, runs the floor, flashes stretch potential, and his offensive game is still finding an identity outside of doing what he feels naturally, but I think he can be decent. Now let's move over to our boy Collin Murray-Boyles. He's someone who's flown up the boards, probably could have been a first round pick last year, has gone up into lottery contention this year. I think if he goes in the lottery or something like that, it's to a contending team. It's to a day one team that doesn't need his offense to be productive. As I say that, what do I mean? They need a guy like Collin Murray-Boyles to be their power forward who can defend multiple positions. And they're hoping that his offensive game can somewhat be like Ryan Dunn. Ryan Dunn's more of a small forward, but Collin needs to just be able to be respectable enough. Collin, similarly to Dunn, is coming in as a notoriously bad shooter. I personally think shooting is one of the easiest things to fix. The thing with him is I like him. I like him if I get him outside the lottery. I think if I'm a team outside the lottery and he falls there, I trade up or we just go and we try to get him. If I'm a lottery team, I just don't think that's the kind of guy, unless like he fills a hole that we desperately need. Personally, that's just not what I go for, but he's going to be able to guard every position. He's got some passing ability. Worst case scenario, he's a Jay Crowder, Grant Williams hybrid. Best case scenario, man, he's a guy who's going to be an all NBA defensive team member or all defense team member for a long time, who's going to stretch the floor and really help a lot of teams out. And I really do mean that. So he's just someone that a lot hinges on the shot coming around to define his role. Now, Noa Essengue, right, is someone that I really, really enjoy. He got better as the year went on. His 3-point shot went from looking like it was going to be a long ways away, but in reality, he closed out the year shooting at a really decent clip. The thing I like about him is the athleticism. He plays like a wing. He's a combo forward. He's a guy who can be a weak side rim protector. He's got the verticality and the athleticism and the lateral quickness to go inside and out. It's the offensive game that needs polish. But what we saw at the end of the year, where at least he could be a 3-point shooter, it's the fact that the motor never stops. He can be a transition threat. That if I'm a team, especially that he's playing for they've done a good job developing guys. And I think you're a team, maybe like the Hornets or somebody, or a team that already has a power forward or players as starters. And I've said it, and I think people are also agreeing, and the Hornets probably know it. Dejan Saloon was a bit of a disappointment. I could see the Hornets, if they wanted to get another pick, or if they fall really far back in the lottery, if like that unfortunately happens, he's a guy that they could go for. But even I think the Jazz wouldn't do it because they have, I mean, Taylor Hendricks is coming back from a horrific injury, but people who want an athletic player who's got all the tools, 7 foot plus wingspan, he's someone to be interested in. I had a scout for a playoff team tell me he really hopes Rasheer Fleming falls. He really hopes. He loves. Oh, my apology. That's definitely not what I wanted. But what I was going to say is Rasheer Fleming is a guy that I think people are like, oh, the shot just came around just now. It's not legit. Don't believe it. Dude, he hit 40%, I think, on like 5-6 threes a game. Like, it wasn't on a small sample size. It's not like he went from being a bad shooter on a small clip to a good shooter on the same small clip. No, he like just increased everything and it went together. He's a 4. He can probably play small ball 5. He can moonlight on at the 3. I think the biggest thing with him is I don't know if he'll be anything more than, I've said, like, offensively, I think he's a guy can give you double-digit points, but will it be outside of catch and shoot, finishing, a cut, or in transition? I think him being athletic, active, he's 6'9" with a 7-foot plus wingspan. Doesn't have much of a handle. Like, he's not going to dribble penetrate and draw fouls being downhill. But again, there's multiple teams that are play-in teams, fringe playoff teams, or teams that have bad years that need backup 4s or need help spacing the floor. And I think they're all going to be looking at Rasheer Fleming, who's going to be able to guard the 5, the 4, the 3, and maybe even some 2s as someone that they're going to be interested in because of those multi-positional abilities. Now, I think the biggest thing with my next guy is Carter Bryant. I know some people are going to be like, is he a power forward? Is he a wing? We go back to the combo forward conversation. And this kid could be really good. I say he's the Trey Murphy, even though Trey Murphy's more of a wing. It's a guy who's going to slowly, we already knew people loved him. Also, he knows sign language, his story, his background, where his family, like, coaches, his grandfather, I believe it is one of like the greatest deaf players of all time. It's a really unique story, but he's a long, athletic combo forward who defends well, has shown shot-making ability. He played off the bench really just for Arizona, but the athleticism, the size, 6 foot, like, look at him. He's like a kid, dude. He's like a teenager, and he's filled out like that. That's what you want. He's definitely going to measure in, hopefully, I think 7 foot plus wingspan from just the look of it. His offensive game is still coming together, but the fact that he knows how to run the floor in transition, either with the ball in his hands or without it. He can block shots and be a guy who can be a Peyton Watson-esque defender, while offensively, like I said, shows flashes of just being a bomber who then has the athleticism just to get to the rim and has a little bit of some dribbles, moves to be a threat in transition or to dribble penetrate. I think he has all the tools to be like a really good. I think he's a bit of a project. Like, you got to go to probably not a contending team or a playoff team, but let's talk about my favorite player in this draft, Bogoljub Markovic, aka Bogey. Yes, Bogoljub Markovic. I interviewed him at Nike Hoop Summit. Fell in love with him when I was in Italy a year ago, or 3 weeks. It'll be a year ago. Covering Eurocamp for Adidas and Hoops Hype at my YouTube channel. I don't know why this is becoming like a real weird way of me saying this, but Markovic is a guy, after watching him, I think he's someone that has the potential to be really freaking good. It's a Pascal Siakam Santi Aldama hybrid. He moves like Santi Aldama, just the gazelle, has the shot blocking ability of Pascal. Like, he defends like Pascal, and offensively, I think he's a mix again of Pascal. He's the dribbling and the shooting ability, kind of like Santi does, but he's way more aggressive and confident and just willing to dunk. And he's also longer than Santi, kind of long, like, even though I think he only has like a 7', 7'1" wingspan on a 6'11" frame, he is a pass, dribble, shoot player who I think will more than likely be an MVP in Europe if it doesn't work out in America. But if it works out here, he's got the rare perimeter shooting to help day one, to be a guy who's going to stretch the floor. He's going to be able to be a weak side rim protector, probably guards threes too. He can moonlight at the 3 and at the 5, especially once he fills out. But the guy has all the tools to scale up and actually be maybe an all-star. And that's the biggest thing with me when I look at him, is the fact that you have the pass, dribble, shoot tools, and he's just aggressive, and he's got a motor. He's a willing defender. Now, Yaxel Lendeborg is someone that I don't know if stays in the draft. He's an athletic slow-mo Kyle Anderson. Like, if he had athleticism at this level, this is a high motor player who hustles, grabs rebounds, defends, who thrives in transitions, will set hard screens, crash the glass, and hustle at every facet. He's transferring to Michigan if he doesn't stay in the draft, and he's someone that's climbed up the boards. I think he's a guy that if you're a team like the Grizzlies, the Heat, the Mavericks, the Bucks, would all love to get. Teams that don't have a pick would love to trade for him. And the Suns are another. Like, so many teams that need help defensively would love this guy. Pacers would love this guy. He's getting better as a shooter. He's athletic. He can be the X factor. He has the length. I just think with him being a Swiss Army knife, at the very least, he's going to be a decade-long role player. Could end up being maybe like a power forward version of Jaden McDaniels. And seriously, he's also incredibly well built, and he's a senior, so it's not like he's a kid. Now, this is the bigger defensive, or the lankier version of Dario Saric, Michael Ruzic. Yes, Michael Ruzic, playing in Spain. He's Croatia, and he's an interesting cap. Yeah, he averaged like under 4 points a game, 1.5 rebounds. His stats really don't scream anything if you're watching him, or looking at his stats, but the way that the guy can dribble the basketball, operate from the short corners or the elbows or the post, and have the passing and connectivity to help a team out. Flashes as a shooter. He's got the mobility to guard both the 4 and 5. He's kind of skinny right now, but he's shown, I think, more of a weak side rim protector, and he's a lot more willing to play defense than you would think. I think he's a pure 4-5. Some people are going to say he's going to be able to play the 3. I don't know if I'd play him at the 3, but what you got here is a guy who's probably more of a gadget player, a master of all, jack of all trades, master of none situation. But if you play it all right, I think he's a guy that can develop into, as I said, a better defensive version of Dario Saric or Nemanja Bjelica. And that's a pretty solid spot starter, heavy minute off the bench role player that plenty of teams are going to want to have. So that's someone that I would definitely keep an eye on if he stays in the draft. He's also someone that I wouldn't be surprised if he pulls out and enters again next year because he's young enough. And finally, we'll talk about a guy that it's not that we were lied to. I like Izan Almansa. He was heralded as like one of the best NBA prospects or out of Spain since Ricky Rubio, which was like a huge expectation to put on the kid. he actually played a lot of center for the G League Ignite and wasn't great, but wasn't terrible. He's always been compared as like the Spaniard version of Al Horford, which I've always thought was a great comparison. He's definitely a switch big. And if the shooting comes around, he struggled in Australia. Again, you have to earn your minutes there. They don't just give them to you. But the ability to probably guard 4s and 5s, he's a willing player. He's got a bunch of accolades. Yes, he doesn't have that burst or shiftiness, but he knows how to score and play within an offense. He just has a passiveness to his game that's a bit annoying. Like he's like fully content disappearing, and like sometimes he's aggressive, and then when he is, you're like, this is the guy that we want to see more frequently. And then there's other times where you're watching him and he also just doesn't look like he's utilizing his tools to the best of his ability. So he's a frustrating player that then at other times he looks like he could be a really good offense. Like I think a high risk, high reward player, a guy that maybe if he finally just comes over to America and develops properly on a team a year or two in the G, he can end up being probably one of the better second round picks in this year's draft. Now, I think the biggest problem with him is that the athleticism needs to translate. If it doesn't, he's got to get big enough and be able to play. Like he has to be able to play the 4 and the 5. If it doesn't, it's going to be hard. And in Perth, look, his per 36 was 16 points, 9 rebounds, and 1.6 assists, under a block and under a steal a game. Not like great numbers, but like not terrible. So good swing player for your power forward position.